So let's go ahead and get started then, because we have a brand new thing going on today. So welcome everyone to the monthly Accudemia session. We are so excited to see you here today and to be bringing you this information, some new segments. So as many of you probably know, we are retiring, or at least putting on pause, the user spotlight segment. We have so many good ones there, and we are moving on to what we are calling the best practices spotlight. So that is going to be led by me, and I don't know if I'll always go first, but this month at least I'm going first, and I'm basically going to be talking about things from less of a technical standpoint and more of a best practices standpoint, which is a very broad term that I'll get into more once I start my presentation. And then from this month, I'm going to be talking about appointments because that's something that recently came up in a client meeting, and I know it's on a lot of folks' mind. Then we're going to move on to our tech talk, which Nick is going to be leading. He's going to be talking about extending Accudemia reports with Excel, so doing some fun stuff with Excel to make your Accudemia data work harder for you. And then we will also take a Q&A. We can take questions on both the best practices and the tech talk, and we will also open it up for general. Just a quick bit of housekeeping before I begin on my talk. I just want to make sure everybody knows about our upcoming keynote webinar. This, as like all our webinars, is free. And this month's speaker is going to be Samantha Tackett from Florida State University, who is going to be talking about helping struggling students with an academic recovery course and other techniques that can also be integrated into the Learning Center. I put that link in the chat, and of course, like I said, registration for that is always free. That is going to be on Thursday, December 4th at 1 o'clock Eastern. So let's get started with our best practices spotlight. I will try to keep it to 15 minutes. There's a lot, especially with appointments, there are a lot of moving parts. So what is the best, what do we mean when we talk about best practices, and specifically with regards to appointments? So today I'm going to focus on setting up appointments to prepare you for success if you are going to launch appointments, or things to keep in mind for your next term start, because a lot of folks here probably already have appointments set up if their center even offers appointments, and it's still worth looking at the way that you do things to see, are there improvements we can make? Can we make Accudemia work better for us? And when I talk about best practices, again, there are no two centers that are alike. I've been working with clients as the customer success manager for Accudemia for going on 5 years now. And the biggest thing I've learned is that really there is no one size fits all. There are some similarities that I see across and some concerns that seem to be repeated, but for the most part, the way you do things, I don't know, when somebody comes to me and says, what should I be doing? I'm going to be asking you a lot of questions first to understand your processes and how Accudemia can fit within those. That said, there are some basic steps that I recommend most centers look up that might be a little different depending on the size of your center, the physical layout of your center, your appointment policies, the type of help that you provide, things like that. And then again, if you've already set up appointments for your center, you're going to be keeping an eye out today for things that you might be able to tweak or ways that you might be able to make your process smoother. There are 8 steps that I've divided into to set up appointments. Not all of them are going to be 100% relevant to 100% of centers, even those that take appointments. But the important thing to keep in mind is that steps 1 through 4, these steps need to be done first, but they can be done in any order. So you could do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 first, and go on from there, whatever makes sense for you and whatever becomes available for you to work on. So for example, you might be waiting on imports, so maybe it doesn't make sense to add your tutors until that happens. And then same thing, steps 5 through 8 need to be done after steps 1 through 4, but these can also be done in any order. If you do have any technical questions, we will take those at the end. Just in general, we'll take questions at the end. But I want to point out the manual is a great resource. A lot of my day is spent often kind of just finding the right articles for people and getting those over to you, because we already have great documentation that shows you how to do things. But there are still like the reason that I send that to folks when that is available is because that documentation is so extensive that it can be overwhelming. So it's my job to kind of help you navigate that with a little less stress. Is to configure your settings. And the reason I put that first is because it is like one of the first things you should think of, but you might not be configuring your settings until you're a little further into the process, which is okay too. Each center has its own settings, and there are some global ones as well. We're not going to get too into the weeds of the actual software today. Specific demos, we already have like great Tech Talk recordings out there on how to do appointments and how to set up settings and things like that. So I want to focus more on the broader ideas. But each center does configure its own settings. That's the beauty of having more than one center on Accudemia. To access that, you're going to go to Administration, Control Panel, Appointments from the top menu. And these options are going to include allowing students to make their own appointments, some no-show options. So like how long an appointment has to be and how early or late an appointment can be signed into for the student to count it as an appointment, how often appointments can be made, and more. There's plenty of stuff in there. Pay attention to all of it because you want to determine the parameters for as much as possible. If your center offers virtual appointments, you're going to want to check the virtual settings in the control panel as well. Step 2, double check your services. You might already have your services set up. Even if you do, go to that page where they're kept, Administration, Center Management Services. Each location does have its own unique services, but the names can repeat across locations. So you might have more than one center on campus that offers tutoring, for example. I do recommend, generally, this is one of the biggest things I tend to recommend most often, is offering too many services. That's probably one of the biggest things that comes up. So when you have too many services, you kind of find yourself in a situation where students tend to get confused. They tend to click the wrong thing. They tend to not be sure what they need or what they don't need. One big misconception that I see is the need to separate tutoring out into different subjects because the student is ideally going to be selecting the course that they are signing in for. So there's no need to have like math tutoring, science tutoring, things like that, because the report is already going to show the subject. But I do recommend, that said, separating your virtual service from your in-person service if you offer a service in both modalities. Speaking of which, check those modalities, make sure that they are offered in the ways that you want. We have 4 modalities in AccuCampus: in-person, appointments, virtual, and in-person, virtual, appointments, and walk-ins, and any service can have any combination of those. But again, separating the virtual appointments from the in-person appointments, depending on the setup of your tutor schedules, is usually the right way to go. Consistent naming conventions is a pretty universal recommendation, making sure that like 2 centers are offering similar services are not naming them too differently. It's worth, if you have multiple centers on your account, talking to each other, coming to an agreement on how these services are going to be named. Step 3 is configure your email templates, and that's also in the control panel under the category email templates. The templates, there's a ton of them. The most used ones include appointment confirmations. Those go to both students and tutors. Reminders for students and tutors. So you set in your settings how far in advance folks get reminded of appointments, and then in the templates is where you configure exactly what those emails look like. No-show notifications when a student misses their appointment, and tons more in there. You can only have one type of template per account. So one template is going to cover all centers using appointment confirmations, for example. But more specific programming is possible. I guess this gets more into like Nick and Mark's side of things, but just know that if you do want to get a little more granular with that, we can help you do that. Step 4, the final step of the first half, adding your tutors. So if these tutors are already in the system, which most likely because if they're students or if they're faculty members, they can be simply added by adding the role, but you can also import them, which I recommend if you're dealing with more than a few. And then if they're not already in the system, if they're completely outside of any other role at your institution, again, they can be added manually or again via import, which I would recommend if there's more than a few of those, because adding more than like 5 people manually is going to get a little tedious. So just keeping in mind, tutors doesn't always mean tutors, and you can change that terminology. And this is a role that should be given to anybody who is going to work directly with students, anybody who's going to sit down with somebody for an appointment, have somebody select them at a sign-in station to work with them. That is who the tutor role as it is built in Accudemia is intended for. So they might be an advisor, they might be an academic coach, they might not be a tutor. That's just what the role is named by default in the system. All right, so now we get into the second half. So step 5, and again, steps 5 through 8 can be done in any order as long as steps 1 through 4 are done first. Setting up tutor assignments. And again, this is relevant if your tutors are actually tutors. If they're advisors, they don't really need to be assigned to courses. Academic coaches, as another example, don't generally need to be assigned to courses. But these are essentially what courses the tutors can assist with. And the goal here is to make it so that the students can, what I see a lot is, or more than I would like to, is centers that feel a little nervous about giving students the ability to make their own appointments. If you are configuring your settings correctly, and if you are not adding too many services, and if you are assigning the tutor courses correctly, there really is no reason not to let students make their own appointments, because they can't break anything. They have to work within the parameters that you've set. As you can probably imagine, manually adding course assignments for every single tutor, especially if you have more than like 5 tutors, is going to get is going to take a lot of time. You can import them. You can add them manually via the assignments tab for each individual user. Now, keep in mind also, some tutors may help with any course. I see this most often in, for example, writing centers, or you might set it up so that a course does not have to be selected. So for advising, again, academic coaching, you might skip that altogether because you just want to eliminate that extra step to make it a little easier for students to access your services. Let's move on to the next slide. All right, step 6 is building the tutor schedules, and that can be accessed by going into Accudemia from the main menu, centers, tutor schedules. You'll see some menus on the left-hand side of the screen with the names, with the drop-down menu with the names of your tutors and different modes that you can work in. Generally, you're going to be working in term mode. That is assuming that every week of your term is going to have the same schedule. If additional hours need to be done in there, then you would work in exceptions mode. We're going to get into a little bit regarding off time and how that works as well. That can be done in exceptions mode, but there's another way you can do it that, in my opinion, is even better. When you're building the schedule, it is very easy. All you have to do is click and drag on the date and time that the tutor shift should be for. When you do that, a pop-up window will come up. You'll mark them as available. Then you want to double check the max number of students they can have at any given time during that shift, and then any available services and courses if it is not going to be the default. You can copy the schedule from the last term. If their schedule is going to be more or less the same, you can do that, and that can make building it a little bit easier. And we already covered term versus exceptions mode. So those are just some things to keep in mind when building your tutor schedules. In general, I don't have a lot of folks that let tutors build their own schedules. They typically have them submit their availability, and then the manager or the director is the one who builds them. But you can give tutors the ability to set their own hours. Again, this is more common in areas that are the staff are professional, like advisors or professional coaches, things like that. And now getting into the calendar integration setup. So if your tutors have this set up, then any off time that is on their Outlook or Google Calendar will sync back automatically to Accudemia, and any appointments made for them in Accudemia will sync over to their Outlook or Google Calendar automatically. To do this, they're going to go to their username in the top right side of the Accudemia menu and click Connect to Calendar. This does need to be done individually by each tutor. And so for folks with a larger staff, what I usually recommend is make this a part of your training or your orientation, because what a lot of folks will tell me is, yeah, I can send the tutors this information, but I can't guarantee that they'll actually do it from home. They might say they're going to do it later and then forget. And so that's why I say, if this is important to you, if you think that your tutors would benefit from having this, that your staff would benefit, make this a part of their training and orientation. It takes 2 seconds for them to set it up, and once it's done, unless there are any changes to their Outlook, unless their email changes or their Gmail changes, they really never have to do it again. This can be anybody can benefit from this, and now that we have the Google integration in addition to the Outlook, more folks can benefit from it. Before, when we only had the Outlook, I was not typically seeing this employed by peer tutors, because at a lot of schools, the peer tutors don't have access to Outlook. They or at least not Outlook 365, they were accessing their email in a different way. But now with Google, it's more beneficial to more folks. But I especially recommend it for higher level support staff, especially staff who will have things on their calendar that are not meetings with students. So advisors might have staff meetings or doctor's appointments or things like that. And rather than having to go into Accudemia to set that off time or wait for you to do it if they don't have the ability to, they can have that integration set up, and it will automatically sync back over to Accudemia as off time, and they don't have to worry about doing it again. If the integration is not set up, their appointments can still be added to their calendars. They will get a little attachment with their confirmation emails. It's a little calendar item. They can click to manually add it. But if any changes are made to that appointment in Accudemia, it will not be reflected in the calendar item. They will get an email saying that that it has changed, but they will have to then go to their calendar to change the appointment themselves. So that's why I recommend, if at all possible, have staff do this. It is going to make their lives a lot easier. It is going to lead to less errors and less problems with, with schedules and availability and things like that. And then finally, setting up virtual meetings. This is not going to be relevant for all. It is more relevant now than it was before the pandemic. But I remember working in higher ed and then working for Engineerica. Hardly anybody was offering virtual appointments before, and now it is very much more common. Some centers have still the same volume that they did during the pandemic, although more so it's going back to more like a 50-50 or less. But regardless, even if you only have 1 or 2 of these a term, I would definitely recommend setting up your virtual meeting integration or connection, because if you don't, then the virtual meetings are either not going to be recorded in Accudemia, or they're going to have to be entered manually, and that it just has the potential for so many errors, and you want your data to reflect as accurately as possible, and the best way to do that is to take the guesswork out of it. The exact setup for this is going to depend on the program being utilized. If your school has a professional Zoom account, we have a direct integration with them, but if not, we can still do integration with virtually any meeting platform, including Teams. I have a lot of folks using Teams, WebEx, I guess not Skype anymore, but any any virtual meeting platform, as long as there is a link for the tutor to be accessed that way, it can be set up. All right, so my last slide is just what are the next steps. So again, if you haven't taken these steps already, you're going to want to start thinking about these steps and check in regularly with me, with your customer success manager. I do frequent check-ins with every single academia client. I, at least once a quarter, try to contact every single account. Some folks get back to me or answer the phone. Some folks do not. It is okay. I know that if you're chugging along, you're busy, you've got lots of other priorities, that is okay. But I love it when folks at least give me a little wave back and say, yeah, we're doing okay. And if they say, yeah, we actually would like to meet, we have questions, or we feel like we could be using the center, the software more efficiently in our center, or even just, we want to tell you what's going on with us, that's awesome too. If you feel like something doesn't look quite right, but again, you can check in with me at any time. You do not have to wait for my reach outs. But if something isn't working quite right or looks a little off, that's a good reminder to submit a ticket. support@accudemia.com. Nick and Mark and our amazing support team are available to help with that. Reevaluate your processes as often as possible. I know this is easier said than done. Again, you have a million other priorities. I get that. But if you can take the time at least like once a year, maybe during one of the slower months, to take a look at your setup and how that actually looks from a student perspective, and consider, is this the best setup for our particular business practice and student population, you're going to be able to get ahead of the curve and avoid issues down the road. And then keep an eye on Accudemia for improvements and updates. We announce those regularly. We have a change log in there. You can always ask us if there are any improvements that might be relevant for your area. But yeah, I think that is going to be it for me. I hope that this was helpful for you all. And if there are any questions, we can take those now about this before we move on to Nick's presentation.